All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's webcast from the Chesapeake Stormwater Network. Again, for those of you who don't know me, my name is David Wood. I'm the Stormwater Coordinator here at the Chesapeake Stormwater Network. Today, we are doing part one of a two-part series. I'll tell you a little bit about part two later, coming up next week, but we're going to be talking about growing your watershed stewardship programs. So we'll go ahead and jump right in. We do have a couple of poll questions today, just two to get us started. For those who are familiar with our webcast, we do this pretty much every week. So, most of you, I think, are probably watching by yourselves at home or whatever right now. If you are with a group, just pick the answer that best represents your group as a whole. We're going to be trying to do some interaction and engagement today. So please, as you have questions for our speakers, you can put them into our Q&A feature on the webinar. It should be in your taskbar. We are also, going to be using the chat a little bit today as well. So throughout, I believe there's 2 or 3 questions that some of our presenters are going to pose to you guys and, get a little bit of dialogue going in the chat box. So please feel free to use that feature as well. We are going to save some time for Q&A sort of around the middle of the presentation and then towards the end as well. You probably heard the alert when it kicked on, but we are recording this session. So we will have the recording as well as a copy of the slides available for you all on our website, probably by tomorrow at the latest. I usually try to get those up within 24 hours. And then finally, we do appreciate your feedback. We have a really short evaluation survey at the end today, 4 questions. It'll take you less than a minute. Those of you who do our webcasts, you'll recognize the survey questions. We keep them pretty much the same, but it gives us a good idea of how we're doing, lets our funders know the same, and ways that we can improve this webcast series for you all. So again, if you're new to the network, welcome. I won't belabor it, but we have a lot of great resources available for you. In addition to these free webcasts that we do, we have fact sheets, technical reports, fun contests like the Best Urban BMP and the Bay Awards, and plenty more. So if you are not already a member of our network, it is totally free. It just means going to the link on the screen, clicking join, and then you will get our newsletter. And then you are officially a member of the network. Very easy. So what we're going to be doing today, we'll do our quick polls, get those out of the way. Then we will set the stage just a little bit, just to kind of give you a background of why we're talking about stewardship and outreach today. Then we're going to have sort of a case study type of example, talking about engaging residents in environmental restoration with one of our BUBBAs winners from this year in Arundel County. Then we are going to kind of keep things within the stewardship realm, but talk a little bit more about behavior change specifically, and a really neat new tool that is available for you all to kind of help a little bit with your audience targeting efforts. And then we will do our Q&A. So let me go ahead and launch our poll questions. Again, if you attend our webcast, you'll recognize these. So, or at least our first one. The first is just to tell us a little bit about yourself and who you're representing today. Whether you are from a government entity of some scale or size, or within the private sector, NGO, or academia. The second question, which will come up at the same time if you scroll down on your screen, is just to see if any of you are familiar with the Chesapeake Bay Program Citizen Stewardship Indicator. So we did a webcast, it was 3 years ago now, actually, in 2018, when the indicator was first developed, talking about sort of, it was a large survey effort to collect information about stewardship behaviors and willingness to help sort of track progress towards that outcome. So anyways, if that rings a bell, let us know. If not, we are going to talk a little bit about it today. All right, so I will go ahead and turn this around for you all so you can see it. We have a nice spread of representation, a lot of local government folks today, which is great. This will be hopefully very helpful and interesting for you. And it looks like the Citizen Stewardship Indicator is new for a lot of folks, so that's great also. I will try at the end today to put the webcast from 2018 from our archives in the chat in case you're interested in sort of catching up on that work a little bit more, but we will also provide you with some details today. So, okay. So this sort of brings me to my stage setter, just briefly. Why we're talking about watershed stewardship programs, sort of what the link is to stormwater managers kind of in particular, because it's a bit of a, an area that crosses disciplines a little bit. And so, when we talk about what's driving stewardship from a stormwater manager's perspective or a watershed manager's perspective, one of the key hooks is sort of that public education and outreach requirements for your MS4 permits. So, the minimum control measure number one, for those of you who are sort of familiar with that world, that requires that programs distribute education materials and perform outreach to help inform citizens about the impacts of stormwater and impervious surface on local water quality and streams. So, a lot of these stewardship programs and behavior change campaigns really can tie in nicely to those education and outreach requirements. So then a lot of it just kind of comes down to deciding, where are we targeting our efforts? What types of campaigns are we building? There's also a stewardship outcome in the 2014 Chesapeake Bay Agreement that was approved through the Chesapeake Bay Program Partnership. And so that outcome, states that we're looking for an increase in the number and diversity of trained and mobilized citizen volunteers who have the knowledge and skills necessary, to enhance the health of our local waterways. So that sort of codified it as, a specific goal that we're seeking to achieve. And a lot of this indicator work that I referenced in the polls is directly tied to that outcome and sort of being able to measure progress. And then, of course, there's the opportunities that we can create through these stewardship programs to implement more best management practices. And that might be, small scale stormwater projects. It could be sort of source control efforts like pet waste and things like that as well. So, just ways of sort of mobilizing groups and kind of spreading the word about programs, maybe to build some momentum for other efforts that you're doing at your local level. So some of the things to think about as we go through today, how are we targeting our populations and behaviors for these outreach and stewardship campaigns? Another thing that we really wanted to touch on is sort of how can we use partnerships, especially between local governments and our nonprofits and private sector partners to sort of leverage what we can do and expand the reach of these programs. And then, again, sort of tied to that indicator, what are we trying to measure with our campaigns? What are the outcomes that we're aiming for? Just really being proactive and thinking about that sort of before we get started so that we really know if we're achieving what we are hoping to. So I mentioned our first presentation today is going to tie into our Best Urban BMP in the Bay Awards contest. So again, for those of you who aren't familiar, that's, the BUBBAs for short. We're really just trying to recognize and celebrate people that are doing innovative things in the field. And it's a little bit more than just a stereotypical kind of stormwater design contest. We wanted to look at ways that programs are running effectively. And that includes things like education and outreach and stewardship so that we can share these interactions with those of you to take some lessons away. And so today we are spotlighting the third place education and outreach program from this year's BUBBAs contest, which was submitted by Arundel County Bureau of Watershed Restoration and Protection, as well as the Arundel County Watershed Stewards Academy. So it's a really good opportunity to sort of showcase the way that partnership worked to deliver a really effective stewardship program. So with that, I want to just go ahead and take a moment to introduce today's speakers. We're really excited to have this panel of folks joining us today. They are all excellent citizen stewardship experts and speakers. So first, we're going to have Sally Albright. Sally has been the grants manager for the Anne Arundel County Bureau of Watershed Protection and Restoration since 2019. She manages grants associated with the county's capital improvement restoration projects, along with co-managing the Anne Arundel County Watershed Grants Program, which funds the implementation of NGO restoration projects and partnerships with the trust. She graduated from Oregon State University with a Bachelor of Science in Environmental Sciences and a Bachelor of Science in Oceanography. She grew up on and in the South River, and prior to joining the county, she worked for the Arundel Rivers Federation, assisting with water quality monitoring and on-the-ground installation and maintenance of restoration projects throughout the South, West, and Road River watersheds. So welcome, Sally. Next, we have Suzanne Etkin. So Suzanne is the founding executive director of the Anne Arundel County Watershed Stewards Academy. She holds a Bachelor of Science in Environmental Science and a Master's of Arts in Religion and Ecology. Suzanne is also a trained community-based social marketing technical assistance provider, assisting stewards and the organizations in the development of campaigns to change polluting behaviors. In addition to founding and managing the Watershed Stewards Academy, she has participated in water quality monitoring efforts, instructed restoration education programs, directed environmental summer camps, served as Arlington Echo's apiarist or beekeeper, and is currently the chair of the Chesapeake Bay Program Stewardship Workgroup. Suzanne is a recipient of countless awards, and maybe most prestigious of all, she once served on the Chesapeake Stormwater Network's board of directors. So welcome, Suzanne. And then Steve, and I apologize if I'm going to mispronounce your name here. I should have asked you before we get started, but Steve Robbie is the president of Opinion Works. It's an independent research firm based in Annapolis. He founded Opinion Works in 2009, 2001, and which applies marketing research best practices to foster behavior change and engagement in environmental stewardship, public health, and charitable giving. Throughout the Mid-Atlantic region, he actively supports Chesapeake Bay restoration and efforts to combat marine debris, studying the key drivers of behavior change under the community-based social marketing model. Since 2007, Steve has conducted the public opinion polls for the Baltimore Sun newspaper, and nationally, he has led measured constituent engagements for the Recycling Partnership, Wilderness Society, Lutheran World Relief, and other partners, as well as a dozen colleges and universities from coast to coast. So welcome, Steve. Glad to have all three of you today. With that introductions out of the way, I want to go ahead and turn it over to Sally and Suzanne, who are going to get us started.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so very much for that kind introduction, David. We are so proud and excited to be a partner with Chesapeake Stormwater Network. And we're very proud of what we've been able to accomplish as an organization and with all of our partners regarding outreach and restoration. So with that, can I get a thumbs up from Suzanne? Does my screen look good?
Yeah, you look good, awesome. Sally.
Okay, awesome. So I just thought maybe I'd set the scene first with where our little corner of the big, beautiful watershed is. Arundel County is about 588 square miles out of the Chesapeake watershed, and we go as far north as around Brooklyn Park in Baltimore City. We go as far west as around Laurel near the Patuxent River Park, and we go as far south as Deal area, maybe just north of Chesapeake Beach, if you're familiar. And we encompass some really major watersheds here. So going down from the top, we have the Patapsco River watershed that we sort of cover the lower end of. We also manage the Magathie River watershed, also the Severn River watershed, the South River watershed, which is very near and dear to my heart, as well as the West and Road River watersheds and Herring Bay as we go down in the South, or as we go down in the Chesapeake Bay watershed. So our personal niche here at the Bureau of Watershed Protection and Restoration is all about meeting these regulatory requirements that David was discussing earlier. Starting first at the very tip top, the Federal Clean Water Act permit program, which insists that municipalities create some sort of system for tracking and managing our stormwater outputs and other kinds of waste. Then we have our local permit, the MS4 permit, Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System Permit. We all just call it MS4. And that is what allows Anne Arundel County to produce or discharge certain amounts of wastewater and stormwater up to a certain threshold that we are also working towards to remediate with restoration projects and outreach efforts. And of course, all of this is supporting the Chesapeake Bay total maximum daily load. And that's how we end up measuring a lot of the value of what we do with total nitrogen, total phosphorus, and total suspended sediments coming out of the bay with everything that we do. And how we go about doing that, of course, we do our direct restoration projects. We also do retrofitting of our existing infrastructure, and also, of course, as we're going to talk about today, educating and outreaching with our local stakeholders and neighbors in the process. So where is all of the money coming from that supports our group? We are primarily supported by the Watershed Protection and Restoration Fee. And this is something that we absolutely recommend that other municipalities are implying, because as you can see, it has created a significant source of funding for the program in a very direct way with local protected property tax dollars. So that goes into a line item on the property tax that's associated with the zoning of a property, tends to be around $35 to $40 for most homeowners on an annual basis in the Anne Arundel County lines there. And as the property gets bigger, that fee gets larger. And that's associated with the amount of impervious runoff that's coming from those properties. So we take the money that is gained from the impervious runoff tax, and we turn that into projects that are going to remove runoff from going into Chesapeake Bay. So around $23 million comes from that fee, and we also apply for state and federal grants to offset those costs for our restoration projects. And as you can see here, the majority of our funding does go directly into these capital improvement projects, which we're very proud of. So one of the big projects that I just wanted to give you guys an example of, just to see the scope of what we do. We do pond retrofits where we decommission old dams or vulnerable dams, and we work those into a restored pond that has a treatment component to it. We also do the same with outfalls and significantly eroded stream channels, or those like what it's described here at the Furnace Creek stream restoration, where there's a lot of impervious removal associated with that to bring that back to a natural ecosystem. So on the left side, you can see here in Glen Burnie, this was a very significant project. It was almost 4,000 linear feet, or actually over 4,000 linear feet, almost a mile of this significant trapezoidal channel here that you could once drive a car down. And as you can imagine, the channelization of this water plus the lack of treatment created a pretty volatile situation downstream. And the removal of that concrete resulted in this absolutely stunning ecosystem that you see on the right. They also incorporated a new design technique where or not a new design technique, but kind of an innovative design technique where they used on-site materials as much as possible, specifically trees of a certain diameter. They would then, once they were felled, they would stick them back into the wetland ecosystem and create roughness along the path that also bolstered the existing vegetation and native plants that were all over the site. So this is one of my favorite projects. I think it's absolutely gorgeous. And of course, it's a very, very big difference from beginning to end. So we see stuff like this all over Anne Arundel County, and we're really proud to give community members something, something to, a nice recreational amenity to appreciate. A lot of times there's trails involved in these projects. But at the end of the day, there's also very significant total nitrogen, phosphorus, sediment, and impervious acre treatment coming out of this project. So now let's get into what we're talking about today, our education and outreach. So Suzanne's going to talk a little bit more about really the major powerhouse of the outreach associated with Anne Arundel County, and that is when we partner with the local voices as much as we possibly can. There's only so much capacity within our organization to use these tools, and as useful as they are, we really lean heavily on partners and depend on the voices of partners to create well-rounded outreach mechanisms for us and for our residents. So first things first, I thought it'd be fun to just kind of click through what's going on Facebook today. And so can we all see? Let's see, let me just share the right screen. New share and here. So this is our Facebook page here. You can just look us up on Anne Arundel County Bureau of Watershed Protection and Restoration. Or if you get part of the way through that, you'll just see the navy blue logo with our beautiful heron in the background. So currently, Eric Michelson, our deputy director, is managing this this page for the most part, as well as our outreach and engagement director, who used to be Rob Fish, but currently we're working on finding somebody new for that position. You just let us know if anybody's interested. So today, we can see we've posted something about the Herring Bay Advocates page. We also post lots of stuff that other people are doing. We share with folks about the restoration projects that we are pursuing and that our grantees are pursuing. And we also use this as a tool to reach some homeowners and some property owners about different outreach campaigns that we're working on. So some of the notable ones that I thought we could just kind of go right to here. These are some posts that I think are pretty indicative of the stuff that we do. Of course, on the left side here is a regenerative step pool conveyance system that was installed in the Severn River watershed. And we can really share a lot with people about how beautiful this project is, but we can also track sort of how they feel about it. We can get their input on the projects, positive, negative, or otherwise. We can even track down to number of people that have looked at this and have engaged with it. And we didn't have to spend any money. That's part of the Facebook algorithm. So there's a lot of value that we can get out of that as far as what people are thinking about our projects. We can also share resources that help people to take advantage of their own skills and help people build their own skills to manage projects on their own property. So when somebody wants to look up what kind of tax reduction opportunities are available for that, Eric goes in and he can add a comment that links right directly to our credit program. And one of the ones I thought was fun on the right side here was Eric posted back in July that there were some really beautiful grass beds coming into the Severn River this year, and just pulled out to the community, are you guys seeing any other grasses around? And even though this isn't necessarily a data mining exercise, it's a really awesome exercise in getting photos and input from residents all over the county as far as what they are seeing and what they're interacting with in the Bay. So we absolutely love Facebook as a way for both us and our residents to keep our fingers on the pulse of what's going on as far as stormwater management is concerned. We're using this for our own outreach. We're also using this to bolster and advertise the accomplishments of our partners as well. So this is absolutely one of our strongest outreach mechanisms internally that we use. We also have our website, which is just aarivers.org. And that is where you can learn about all of our different projects that we have going on. You can look up our annual report, and we have one every year that posts not just our outreach successes or our restoration project successes, but really everything that we're doing department-wide about restoration and maintenance and infrastructure and what's kind of to look ahead. And on the right here, this is a really, really helpful interactive project viewer that I'll just share real quick. Let's share this screen. Yeah. So I wanted to talk a little bit about our restoration project viewer. Where is the, it's kind of not being nice. All right. Back it up. That's fine. So our restoration project viewer, sorry, I'm not able to pull the link up right now, but that's why we do screenshots. So that's a really helpful thing where you can just Google AACo maps, and that is all you have to Google, and that'll take you right to a link that goes through all different kinds of viewers and applications that are public and available to the community, whether that's land use that you're looking up or zoning, or you want to look up utilities. Parcel information up to a certain point is available publicly, and BWPR has our own additional application that you can pretty much find every project that we have installed throughout Anne Arundel County, as well as those that have been completed by our partners that we have provided grant funding towards. So it was kind of cool growing up in Edgewater. I knew of a couple of different projects that were going on with the Federation, but it wasn't until I started looking at this project viewer that I started seeing projects that went in, before I was ever a part of the Federation, or projects that were funded by the state and that were right up the street from my house that I didn't realize. So I think that this is a really powerful app for not only folks to get inspiration of projects, but also just to see what's going on around you and to see if there's any opportunities to tie in with an existing project or an existing partner that's familiar with the area. So this is a really great resource for us. And I just wanted to also take a moment to plug our wonderful watershed restoration grant program, which is also funded by those local property taxes with the watershed restoration fee. So this is one of our most powerful tools for us to invest county tax dollars into projects that are not necessarily county initiated or on county property, which, the Watershed Stewards Academy will tell you that Anne Arundel County is mostly privately owned as far as our land is concerned. There's a significant piece of it that Anne Arundel County is not able to directly get involved in and step foot inside. However, we do want to be able to reach those people and empower those people to take control of the problems that they're facing. So one of the mechanisms that we're able to do that is through this nonprofit restoration grant program, where we can work with schools and we can work with Girl Scout troops and we can work with HOAs that are wanting to do some kind of project on their property. And they can partner up with a nonprofit organization. If they aren't already a 501c, they can partner up with somebody like Arundel Rivers Federation in the South River Watershed, or the Severn River Keeper or Severn River Association in the Severn River Watershed. And those organizations can help walk those parties through the process while also opening up the opportunity to apply for these municipal grants. So one that recently just went in, I have pictured here, was installed by the Severn River Keeper in Arnold. And that is at the St. Dixon Farm, which is just on the other side of the bridge at the Naval Academy. And it's a big, beautiful sod farm. that they're actually interested in putting some livestock in as well. And this farm, the story behind it is that they actually had a conservation plan with the Natural Resource Conservation Service with USDA to manage their stormwater, but or to manage the pollution coming off of their farm and into the bay, because as you can see in the top left of that corner of the photo, they are right on the water in the critical area back there. Those are boats. So they looped us in so that we could talk about installing a best management practice. And the Severn River Keeper partnered up with that sod farm, who really just wanted to try and control the amount of water that was coming off their property, and also manage the farm in order to maximize the amount of sod that they could grow on the property. The Severn River Keeper got looped in. We ended up working with their designer to come up with a project that had step pools and also different wetland pockets to actually serve some significant environmental value and to capture a lot of that runoff. And it was really to no expense of the property owner. It was a combination of county and state funds that went into it. It was about $500,000 total. 242 of that came from our grant program. So it was something that we're really proud of, because agricultural communities is not something that we've been able to tap into much before this point, because the idea of doing stormwater restoration BMPs hasn't necessarily become commonplace in those spaces. And the Severn River Keeper and St. Dixon Sod Farm are kind of breaking the mold on how we can make this more accessible for our local farmers, and how we can actually help them manage their stormwater without them having to go into some kind of major economic downturn as a result of that. So we're really proud of this program, the Watershed Restoration Grant Program. We support things as small as little rain gardens and as large as these St. Dixon sod farms. So we absolutely think that this is a strong mechanism for investing in our communities. I also just wanted to do one last plug here on one of our recent campaigns that we've been working on. So we're starting to get into the realm of doing direct outreach and behavior change campaigns with our MS4 permit to try and report to MDE on work that's being done to mitigate bacterial pollution in the bay associated with domestic pet waste. So some quick stats that helped us inform this campaign here were stuff from the Center for Watershed Protection in 1999, as well as some initial surveys that our department, as well as the Watershed Stewards Academy, were conducting a few years back. First of all, 40% of the residents in the bay own a dog. We love our fluffy friends, and they are very well represented here in Arundel County. An interesting, and I'm going to say interesting because it's probably a choice, one word that we can choose, is that an interesting point here is that they've been able to identify, doing DNA tests every so often, of the bacteria in the bay, that up to 45% of that bacteria that they find is resulting of domestic pet waste. And that of course changes depending on the community and the watershed that you're in. We see somewhere where it's not impaired. We see somewhere where it's 10 to 15%, up to 45% of bacteria being caused by pet waste. And when they were doing these initial surveys and walking through these communities that were identified as being impaired, we noticed that there wasn't pet waste in the streets and in the sidewalks. So that led us to think, maybe this is happening on private property, and maybe we should be focusing our efforts into encouraging people to take better care of the pet waste that ends up on their lawns. And so that informed a survey that resulted in coming up with county residents reporting, up to 14% of them reporting never picking up pet waste on their property. And I think we all know sometimes people are not as honest on the front end on these surveys. So that number might be a little higher than what is reported. So this gives us a nice solid direction to try and identify not necessarily a point source, but a group of point sources that we might be able to reach with a specific outreach and behavior change campaign. So we partnered up with Pinnacle Communications, who is a wonderful contractor that we've worked with before on many other projects, including our annual report. And they have helped us come together with lots of different outreach materials and this slogan, "Stop pollution in its tracks." So we're currently in the testing phase of this program right now, where we are testing the outreach materials with focus groups. We think that's a really important step, not just, becoming the government spitting out resources at people and telling them to listen, but engaging the community and listening to what their perspectives are, their thoughts are on the issue, and finding ways that maybe we can come together towards a common goal. So we're really creating these materials as a reaction to the perspective of the community, as opposed to making assumptions and distributing the materials. So our outputs are going to be that we're going to be collecting some pledges of the community members. We're also going to be distributing commitment boards for folks to put in their yard. We're testing what those boards are going to look like in the focus groups. We're also going to be training and distributing materials to dog walker ambassadors, so representatives within the communities. That's a very, very important key member of this whole story here, is within the community, trying to train and engage members of those neighborhoods to really make this their own and to manage it once we've kind of stepped aside and given them what they need. Of course, our outcomes that we would really, really hope to see from this is an increase in the amount of people that are picking up pet waste in their yard. And one fine day in the long, long future, when we can start measuring things in the scale of data, be able to measure an actual decrease in the proportion of pet waste making up this bacteria in county waterways, especially in the impacted areas. So this campaign is sort of targeting those communities that are noted to be impaired by bacteria and fecal coliform or pet waste. But we're also going to be making this county-wide and distributing it with folks like the Watershed Stewards Academy, who's been a wonderful partner in helping us identify different stewardship indicators and trends, and working with previously implemented programs to figure out how we can build off of those in those communities to make it something that is more applicable county-wide. So we're really excited to get this one out into the community. We've tested it on a small scale so far, and we anticipate here in the next year or so being able to distribute these materials and share this campaign countywide. We definitely look to our neighbors at different counties to see what they're interested in doing and maybe what they've done in the past, and see how maybe we can work together to create some kind of regional model one day. That would be wonderful. So I just wanted to really, really drive home the fact that this takes a village. BWPR is not an island. We are part of a very big community of partners that help us to reach all the different voices that make up this diverse county. And some of the organizations and departments that I've listed here include the State Highways Administration, Department of Natural Resources, where we get a significant amount of funding towards our programs. We also lean on research centers and the staff and faculty associated with those centers to get a lot of technical assistance and guidance on our programs, like the Smithsonian Environmental Research Center, Arlington Echo Outdoor Education Center, which David noted earlier, is a wonderful outdoor education program at Arundel County, where Watershed Stewards Academy is based. And we're very lucky to have that relationship with the public school system, because those students are able to come out and work with us on our projects a lot of the times to do planting. So that is a really great mechanism for reaching the younger voices of Arundel County. And I also just wanted to say Watershed Stewards Academy absolutely is a major player in the outreach and engagement mechanisms that are working and are really making a big difference in Anne Arundel County. So I'm excited to pass this off to Suzanne to really shine on the Watershed Stewards Academy piece of things. But do we want to stop for any Q&A before we moved on to that, or do we want to just kind of go on ahead, Suzanne? What are you thinking?
So I think we're supposed to go on to our next presentation, the second half, in 9 minutes. So I say we push on and maybe save discussion for the end, but I would invite people, please write in the chat if you have questions. And I know we've got a bunch of local government folks here. So if anything that Sally's saying resonates with you, maybe you have tried a similar outreach strategy, feel free to not only put questions, but also comments in the chat. I think one of the most fun things about these webinars is sort of the communal, learning. We all learn from one another. So Sally, I really appreciate that great tee up. And one thing that I hope came through in Sally's comments is really the partnership attitude that the county has with its residents. which I think is very unique. Those of you in other counties, maybe you have a similar sort of ethic from your local government, but I think in my experience, it's really unique, particularly the Bureau of Watershed Protection and Restoration. Here we have the director of that whole bureau interacting frequently on Facebook with all kinds of, random people. And I think it really serves to demonstrate that open door policy that the county has with its residents. So I'm going to talk really briefly about Watershed Stewards Academy. We've been around for a little while, and I think that many of you might know what we are, who we are, but I'm going to tell the story in a second about how we got started, but I want to frame the context of this discussion, not only about our organization, but about the partnership with the local government, which, our organization could exist and we could do some things and it would all be great. But it's the partnership with the local government that elevates Watershed Stewards Academy from a nonprofit organization like all the other watershed organizations to this real, I think, powerhouse that is able to affect real change in partnership with lots of people. So it's the partnering with local government that I think is pretty significant. You can go to the next slide. So we are a nonprofit organization. We were founded in 2009, basically to help the county solve the problem on the screen right now, which is that, boy, we've got a whole lot of pollution. And how are we going to clean that up? As Sally mentioned before, you can go to the next slide. A lot of that pollution is coming from private property. Here's a community on Cattail Creek on the Magathie River that is indicative of a lot of communities. They're just a residential community, but there's a lot of stormwater runoff that's coming off of their property, and a creek that runs through their community that actually drains a very large area of Severna Park and carries with it, just a torrent of water. And if you go to the next slide, you can see a little bit about what this torrent of water has done to the creek. It basically incised the creek. The picture on the left was there is their parking lot actually, and it was getting undercut. And then of course their slips were all silted in because of all the siltation. So, thank you for that great reference to the Berrywood. So in 2005, the Berrywood community came to the county and said, hey, look, we have this huge problem. We have all this pollution. Our kids can't swim in the creek. We got to get our slips dredged. It's a problem. What can we do about it? And so the county worked with the community to basically find a solution. And long story short, they were not able to get the community behind doing a project in that community because there wasn't a leader in the community that could do the back work, could do all of the door-to-door conversations that it's necessary to get a community on board for a big project. So that experience, the lack of a community leader, really led the academy, the county to found the Watershed Stewards Academy. So you can go to the next slide. So the Watershed Stewards Academy was founded out of a realization that people really want to make a difference. They have no idea how to get started, and there really aren't enough resources within government institutions to capitalize on the good intentions of many of our residents. And then most importantly, clean water can't be achieved by government alone. So you can go to the next slide. There's really a conversation between the director of Arlington Echo, Steve Barry, and the director of public works then at the time, Ron Bowen, along with Ginger Ellis and myself, that sort of got together and created this program to train community leaders and really resource them and make them the mouthpiece to be able to do some restoration. So you can go to the next slide and just keep clicking till you get. So the model works like this. So we identify these community leaders, we train the community leaders, and that third box really should be the biggest one, which is that we support them as they're working with their communities. And so we're able to leverage a lot of people power. We're also able to leverage a lot of private investment and dollars. We're able to drive some behavior change, and we're also able to sort of create some strength communities as we work together for resilience. You can go to the next slide. And so communities in our organization. Oh, I live in a neighborhood across. Oh, hi, Amy. You live across from Berrywood. Great. So we work with residential communities, houses of worship. Also, schools are considered communities for us, and then also workplaces. So we're defining communities as anywhere people live, work, or gather in Anne Arundel County. So go ahead to the next slide. And so here we go, Berrywood now. So in 2014, Berrywood got a watershed steward trained. So that's almost a decade after the original problem that Berrywood identified, and that's Molly LaChapelle. And through her leadership and some others in the community, they were able to have the project on the right installed, which is a beautiful stream restoration that cleans and cools the water. And it would not have happened if there wasn't a community leader who was then supported by the local government, by various other organizations, and sort of had this support team around her. So, so that's a great success story that started at the beginning of WSA. So you can go to the next slide. Another example, this is Gravely and Davidsonville, where we've had a watershed steward since 2009. And she started, very small, home to home, trying to get people to plant trees, to shrink their lawns, to install rain gardens. She had a forest conservation plan done for her community. And all of that work over a decade has resulted in the largest stream restoration in Anne Arundel County. And so again, if there wasn't that consistent community leader, and again, she wasn't just trained in 2009 and then there she goes. It's the support, the consistent support of Watershed Stewards Academy, of professionals, and really consistently of the county. So that's the kind of thing that results when you have long-term investment in community leaders. So go to the next slide. And so this is just a little graphic of what we've achieved so far. There are still 190 stewards active today. They represent over 100 communities and 30 faith congregations. A lot of projects, and I think there's one more click, and we've reached about 180,000 neighbors in one-on-one contact. So it's a lot of effect, but go to the next slide. The key to this organization being strong is really the investment from Anne Arundel County. So those of you that are in local governments, if you have a Watershed Stewards Academy in your local area, go ahead and put where you are and what it is, what county, and that you have a WSA. There, I think, are 6 others in Maryland. There's some in Pennsylvania and other places around the watershed. But the reason that WSA is able to be so successful is because Anne Arundel County makes a long-term investment in the organization. So we actually write and report on the MS4 and WIP outreach and education requirements. So we author those and report on those. And because of that, they contract with us for that service. And we combine that contract with other grants, with private funding to fund the whole program. And that really has allowed us to invest long-term in these mobilized leaders. We have these leaders in these communities engaged when we need help, grassroots help for environmental regulations like the Stormwater Fee or the Forest Conservation Act or the Green Infrastructure Plan. We've got this cadre of people at our fingertips who want to be engaged. It's also allowed our organization to have the capacity to do some new programs in partnership with the county. So we have a tree planting program called Replant Anne Arundel, and we're actually responding to the recent tornado victims and getting trees to replace downed trees lost in the tornado. We're looking at some equity maps and really trying to focus trees in areas where there are not great equity scores. And so if our organization didn't have the capacity, we wouldn't be able to do that extra stuff. And then the last thing I'll mention that we've been able to do is to create a short course for HOA leaders and property managers, which came directly out of a problem that Anne Arundel County was having, which I think those of you in other local jurisdictions can probably relate to this. I mean, the problem is there's all these mandated green infrastructure program projects with new development, and they're not maintained as well as we'd like them to be, and so don't function as well. And so that course is directly targeting people with mandated green infrastructure projects so that they can have some resources to better care for those. So all of that is in a big part because of the investment that the county makes in Watershed Stewards Academy. Last slide I have is, so we do write and report on MS4. We also provide detailed project information from all of our projects so that the county can take pollution credits. And then most importantly, we can help spread key messages like Sally's Pet Waste campaign. Guess who are going to be the block leaders for that? In many neighborhoods, I'm sure it will be watershed stewards. And then other messages that the county needs to get out. Here, all of a sudden, we have many people throughout the county that can help spread the word. So I think that is the end. So that's all we have, and maybe it's best to just go right into the next presentation, or.
Yeah, I think we can go ahead and start transitioning. I did have one question that I wanted to sort of tee up for you guys, and at the risk of getting a little bit into the weeds, I do think it would be helpful to maybe talk a little bit more about sort of the day-to-day or the contract mechanism that sort of allows Anne Arundel County and the Watershed Stewards Academy to sort of work together, because I think part of that is going to be useful to folks is sort of what are the nuts and bolts of like, how do we actually formalize and make this relationship happen, as opposed to sort of just having occasional email check-ins to say, hey, what are you guys up to, or whatever, can we work together? So how does that look sort of from a practical sense?
Yeah, so long before we had the stormwater fee in Anne Arundel County, even back when WSA was founded, we already were authoring, because we were founded out of this relationship between Public Works and the school system. We were already authoring the MS4 and the WIP language for outreach and education. So we had that basis as like, here's what we're doing, and the county is required to then do these things because it's part of their permit. So we had that foundation, but we actually inked we have a 5-year contract with the county. It's renewable annually for 5 years, and there's a scope of work that directly ties back to those permits. So we have very specific deliverables. And then we've got a reporting period twice a year. And so our report goes directly to MDE and other agencies. And it's interesting that we see the comments that they get back on their MS4 permit, and they always comment, on the strength and quality of the outreach and education component. So it is a contract, it's 5 years, and then we have renewed it once so far.
Great. Well, thanks. So I think we can go ahead and move along to the next part of our talk. I think, Suzanne, you're steering the next half. Okay.
Yes. So can you stop sharing maybe, Sally, and I will try to start sharing. I think maybe I can share over you. Let's see. All right. Oh, look at that. I don't think that's where we're supposed to be. We'll go back to the beginning. So I'm also thrilled to be here talking about behavior change with one of my very favorite people here. So I know we already got a really nice introduction from David, but I did just want to take a moment to pause and say that the next little bit of conversation is coming to you in a large part from someone who is my personal behavior change guru, Steve Robbie. He's someone who has taught me so much about people and about how to really understand people and connect with them and to help turn their good intentions into positive things for the watershed. So Steve, I'm grateful to be presenting alongside you, and I'll say two things I know about Steve personally. He likes green smoothies, and we both share a love of our rescue pups that run our lives.
Thank you, Suzanne. Yeah, my green smoothie is still right here from earlier. It's finished now, but yeah, so Suzanne and I have a great professional mutual admiration society, and I happen to have the chance to serve as board chair for the Watershed Stewards Academy when we first formed our board, and stayed for 9 years, so I stepped away a little bit ago last year, but Suzanne and I have done many things together. And what I want to say about Suzanne and all of you out there who are working in whatever roles you're in, you might be somebody like this or you might know people like this, but what Suzanne brings together, and I've always admired this about her, is the ability to talk WIPs and MS4s down to the finest technical detail while also being the person in the meeting who has the big creative idea. I mean, a visionary coupled with a true details person and somebody who drives herself harder than anybody that I know, probably including myself. So the two of us like presenting things and hanging out together. So hopefully you'll feel that dynamic. And we do want to encourage all of you to populate the chat with any thoughts you have as we go forward. So Suzanne, I hand it back to you.
Okay, thanks, Steve. So today, Steve and I are going to be, and now I think I can't advance my slides. That's funny. Oh, there we go. So Steve and I are going to be talking a little bit about a body of work that we have been working on for a long time now in connection with the Chesapeake Bay Program's Stewardship Workgroup. And I want to give a little bit of big picture. So we all know that our watershed is large. It not only encompasses a whole lot of land, it encompasses a whole lot of people. But when we think about what are the strategies that we use to clean up the bay, we're talking about stream restorations, outfall stabilizations, green infrastructure, tree plantings, cover crops, a lot. We're investing very heavily in land-based strategies to clean up the bay. And what Steve and I think is that we're really missing a huge opportunity to restore the bay by focusing on people. There are 18 million individual decision makers. They make decisions every day, many times a day, that positively or negatively affect the watershed. And right now, we are not investing in engaging those folks in a real quantifiable, results-oriented way. And so what we're going to be introducing to you today is hopefully a tool that you'll soon be able to do that might help you focus on these individual decision makers in your own jurisdictions in a better way. So in terms of all of these actions, right? So I'm talking to people, you're on the Chesapeake Stormwater Network webcast. You might consider yourself an environmentally friendly person. Steve just held up his mug. We all carry our reusable drink containers. I have two, and we might carpool or drive low emission vehicles. We might even pick up our pets' waste, right? But I know that there is a behavior that you as an individual might not do as consistently as you wish that you would. So I want you to take a moment now and think about what is that thing, that stewardship behavior that you wish that you would do all the time. And I want you to bare your soul in the chat. I want you to write that down in the chat. Tell us what it is you're not doing that you wish you would do. And I have a big long story, which I won't tell now, about how I used to not use reusable bags and I had to figure out how to do that. So even the choir, those of us that are in the choir, might not be doing everything that we can do. And I'm going to do this slide, and then I'll let Steve, talk through what people wish they did more. So think about what you wish you did more and put it in the chat. David did allude to this body of work is under the context of the stewardship work group, which in 2014, for the very first time, people were included in the Bay Agreement. So there is now a goal to increase the number and diversity of trained and mobilized, and we call them resident volunteers, not citizen volunteers anymore, with the knowledge needed to enhance their local waterways. So Steve, what do you see that people wish they would do more?
Sally wishes she rode her bike more, and I do too, by the way. And I wish I remembered my reusable bags. I have the same problem that Suzanne used to have. I think she's cured herself. I often end up carrying things out of the grocery store in my bare hands, which is the solution.
We'll keep bearing your souls. We'll move on because I think that's all we have in the chat, right? Oh, good. There's another one.
Composting, for sure. Okay, so I want to share with you a social science theory that probably a number of you have seen before and feel familiar with. And so this curve that's on the screen is called the diffusion of innovations curve, which is credited to Everett Rogers, a social scientist from mid-20th century, who wrote a pioneering study and kind of developed this curve, the theory of adoption of new behaviors. And I think a lot of us think about it in a technology sense. You think about the people that are out there to buy the new iPhone 13 at midnight, they're clicking buy on the Best Buy website as soon as they can. So those are the innovators or the early adopters. And then you've got people all the way through the middle bulge, who are most of us, and then people laggards who are still dealing with the oldest possible technology and loving it, So, even though vinyl records are cool again, still it's old technology. So this can be applied to the environmental context. I mean, if we're trying to get people to adopt behaviors, the same principles apply. These personality types, the willingness that people have to adopt environmental behaviors quickly, medium, good intention, but maybe it's inconvenient for me, or slowly, that still bears itself out in our context as we're trying to make behavior change. So I'll give credit to Nancy Lee, who is another social scientist, modern day, out in the Puget Sound region. She coined these three terms, the show-me's, who are on the left. These are the people who all you got to do is show them the behavior, and they're like, oh, sign me up, I want the rain barrel. And over on the right are the make-me's. You're going to have to make me do it. I mean, they are people that are opposed to just doing any of this stuff. And so we have to club them or prod them or something. And then in the middle is most people. As I said, well-intentioned, but life is busy. I've got a lot of other priorities. Maybe it costs a little money or it's inconvenient. So I need a little help. So Nancy calls those people the help-me's. So if we advance to the next slide, you'll see how we have traditionally addressed these groups. The show-me's on the left, the slide will come. It's still propagating, right? Technology. But I can just describe, here it is. So there's an inverted curve, which describes how we traditionally have addressed these three groups in society. So on the left, think about it. We have traditionally invested a lot in communicating. Like we have our beautiful brochures and our website, and we go out and speak at community meetings. And there's nothing wrong with any of that because you have to build a foundation of awareness. But in terms of actual behavior change, through all of those efforts, all you're really picking up are the show-me people, the people at that leading edge of the curve. And then at the other end, our society, think about it, invests tremendous resources in compelling those make-me's to do what we want them to do. So we sue people, we regulate, we legislate, we fine. There's a lot of effort placed on getting those make-me people. And who does this paradigm leave out? Well, it's all those folks in the middle who we describe as help me, when all they really need is a little nudge. You've heard about nudge theory. And so that's what underpins this whole thing that we're going to talk about. Suzanne, let's go on to the next. Did you have a chat question you wanted to administer here?
No, do I yet? Oh no, I'll do it later.
Later, okay. So, so the Chesapeake Bay Stewardship Indicator. So in 2014, the Bay Agreement for the first time included a stewardship goal. And these are all number one. That's hilarious. They got renumbered as number one, but that's probably true. They're all very important purposes of this indicator. So Suzanne and I were both involved foundationally, but other people were involved as well, who I'm going to mention in a couple minutes, in creating this indicator that you're about to see. And this is a measurement, number one, of stewardship. So we want to know what people across the watershed are doing and how likely are they to do things in the future. The second number one is that we want to inform campaigns. And so we want all of you, if you're interested in behavior change in your jurisdictions or your communities, to have the tools that you need to develop a really great, effective campaign. So this has some components in it that helps people do that. And then third number one is that we are going to share this data widely. I mean, what we're going to show you in a couple of minutes here is the new portal, which will share it far and wide. And that's going to enable people to be able to access a great big important data set and apply it in your local situation. So yes, let's go forward to that next slide. So there are 19 different behaviors that are measured on this survey tool that creates the indicator, and here they are. And there were some criteria for the selection of these particular behaviors. They needed to be things that average residents out there in the communities in the watershed could do. So they're scalable to a residential individual household level. They're repetitive in nature. So you can do these things over and over again, including, I would argue, tree planting, which is a repetitive action for me, probably others who are on this Zoom today can't resist planting a tree when you have a chance. And so we would argue all of these are repetitive actions that once you perform them, we hope they become habituated and it creates a new norm where people are behaving differently. And so this tool is meant to measure all of that. Let's go forward. Here's how it's collected. It's a big data set. So there were 5,212 interviews conducted across the watershed. We wanted it to be statistically significant in all 7 state level jurisdictions across the watershed. Within each of those, there's a random sample. So imagine 7 different samples being segmented together and then weighted so that you can look Bay-wide, you can look at your state, or you can even take it down to your individual community level. There's a little bubble in here that's in blue that you can see around Arundel County. So Sally actually referred to this in her remarks. A couple of the numbers that she cited came from this data set. And back in 2017, when the Big Bay-wide thing was fielded, Arundel County and the Chesapeake Bay Trust together came up with a little bit of extra money. And that was enough to be able to field another 603 interviews, totaling the Anne Arundel sample up to 678. So that was big enough that we could look at Anne Arundel County on its own with significance. And so Suzanne and Sally and all the other practitioners here in Anne Arundel County are able to look very deeply at the local community and make some really good decisions about behaviors and what to work on here. That opportunity, when we refield this in 2022, is available to every community. The marginal cost of that is pretty low, as opposed to doing this all from scratch on your own. So that's an opportunity that people will be hearing about as we get into 2022. Let's go to the next.
I think this is my slide next. Oh, yes. Okay, so here I am again. I know not everybody was willing to say what they're not doing, but I have a follow-up question for those that want to participate. So Steve talked about these 3 different groups of people, the show me, the help me, and the make me. And we all already know that a lot of us are in the help me group for some behaviors. Sally in riding her bike. I think she knows she wants to ride her bike. She hasn't done it. She doesn't ride every day to work, let's say. What would help Sally ride? What help does she need to ride her bike more? What help does Steve need to ride to use more reusable bags? What help does Ashley need to compost more? So in the chat, as we're talking, I just want you to be thinking about if you have a behavior that you have not yet adopted with frequency yourself, think about what kinds of things might help you to take that action. And you can write that in the chat. We'll return to it in a few minutes. So the stewardship indicator that Steve mentioned is going to help you. There's Tom Cruise, help me help you, is going to help you, people in local governments and in watershed groups with your behavior change campaigns. The stewardship indicator can help you choose the right behavior. We're going to talk about that in a minute. It can help you prioritize an audience because your audience is not the entire county or the entire city. It's a specific group of people. What the indicator won't help you do is to understand the why or the motivating factors. That's a whole nother process that the indicator data will not assist with. So that's a question we get all the time right away. Well, do you know why people don't do these things? And that's another part of social marketing that Steve may be able to touch on very, very briefly, but the website that we've created that houses this data does give some information about that. So really quickly, a primer on choosing the right behavior. So, there's a million things that you might want people in your local area to do. You might want them to pick up their pet waste. You might want them to stop using single-use plastics. You might want them to plant trees. You might want them to hook up their downspouts to rain barrels. Which one do you work on, right? And so this indicator for the behaviors that we've measured will help us understand two important things. It will understand, how many people in your community are not already doing this. We call that the opportunity score, because obviously you don't want to choose a behavior to work on that everybody's already doing, right? You want to choose one where there's an opportunity to change behavior, which means that people are not already doing that. You also want to choose a behavior that people in your local area are willing to do. You're never going to change a behavior, and everyone who has a spouse knows this. You're never going to choose a behavior that someone does not want to change, right? They have to want to change the behavior in order for you to be successful in changing that behavior. So likelihood is the other thing that this data will help us with. Now, there's one other factor in the three-legged stool of behavior selection that we call impact. So what is the impact on water quality? How much is it going to help clean up the local waterway? And the indicator does not numerically measure that, although we have some rough comparative qualifications for impact, which Steve will talk about when he takes a look at the data. So that's sort of how you might choose your behavior, and that's really important. You also need to prioritize an audience, and just like choosing a behavior, prioritizing an audience has a nice little handy dandy formula here. You want to choose a segment of the population that's relatively large, so size. Obviously, you want to try to impact a lot of people's behavior. You don't want to create a whole behavior change campaign for an audience of 5 people. That makes no sense. Opportunity. So again, just like behavior, the audience is not already doing the desired behavior. So that's opportunity. So does your audience, are they not already doing it? So you don't want to create a fertilizer campaign, let's say on for a community that doesn't already fertilize, doesn't fertilize anyway. So that's opportunity. And then likelihood again is, how ready to act, how likely is the target audience to actually adopt your behavior. And Steve's going to illustrate some of this as we walk through the website, but I wanted to give you just a little primer in terms of, the way that we select audience and behaviors. And we actually have formulas that are already in our handy dandy little website. And this is just, I think this is my last slide, right, Steve, before you, yeah. So this is just a little bit of a demonstration of the data that Steve helped collect in the indicator that really compares different demographic segments and their likelihood to pick up pet waste. And you can see very clearly from this graph that there's a great difference between different groups of people and their likelihood to pick up pet waste. So if you live in West Virginia, I am so sorry. You may want to think twice before you launch into a lot of money on a pet waste campaign, given that there are audiences in West Virginia that may not be as likely as others. Those of you in the over 45 set, sorry about that. That doesn't mean that everyone over 45 has lost hope on picking up pet waste. It just means in this data set, you can see that there are some groups with a greater proclivity toward being likely to pick up pet waste. Before I move off this slide, I'll just ask Steve, is there anything else you want to say about pet waste, or shall I stop sharing and let you unveil the web portal?
Oh, I assure you I have much more to say on pet waste, but it's my favorite behavior, but we'll wait. So I'll do that in the context of the portal.
All right.
So
Steve, it's all yours.
Okay, everybody. So we're very excited to share with you the new forthcoming portal. Now, this thing is about what, 2 to 4 weeks away, we hope, we think. It's very close to being ready to launch. And so what I'm going to do with you is kind of give you a little walk through the beta site. This is a live site, but not yet unveiled for the public. And Suzanne and I and Casey Wetzel are going to give a presentation at the Watershed Forum in early November in much more detail. So if there's somebody who is really interested in this data set and wants to apply it, or wants to learn about this portal and how you're going to extract data from it in a way that will be helpful to you, then we would, David, lots of words on pet waste, that's good. So we would invite you to that session on November 3rd, I think, at the forum, and do join us. I want to give credit before I launch into the site to some people. And some of you, a lot of you probably know these people, but this not just Suzanne and me that have driven this forward. First of all, credit needs to go to Guy Stevens and his web development team at the Bay program, who've put a great deal of effort into designing this beautiful site that you are about to look at. A technical contractor, Greenfin, who some of you probably know, and their partner V4 have done the back end, the technical side of a lot of what you're going to see. And then, of course, over at the Bay program, Amy Handon, who's the social science coordinator, has been really driving this for a long time. And Olivia Wisner, who works with her, who's got the coolest job title, Fostering Chesapeake Stewardship Staffer. And so she's somebody probably some of you know, and she's great. And then Casey Wetzel, who I mentioned. I mean, those are the kind of core team that have really pushed this whole thing forward, and it provides a whole lot of stuff. So as Suzanne has done, I'd invite you to use the chat. I'm going to give you something to comment on if you'd like. What would you like to get from a tool like this? So here's a web-based tool that's going to tell you all about behavior change. It's going to give you some things that you can apply in your local community. So do you have any specific needs, hopes, desires for a tool like this? And if you do, just put that stuff into the chat. So we've got 5 or 6 pull downs here. I'm going to quickly give you a little stroll in the minutes we have through a couple of these. So the behavior change tab, which gives you an overview of what behavior change is and why it's important. And it gives you 5 important things that you should be doing. Suzanne mentioned this. It starts with choosing the right behavior to influence. You need to choose the right thing. Choose a behavior that can be moved. The question from Tiffany, is this the one that CBT had up and required its grantees to use? Yes, it's a successor to that one. So that case study database that you know about is being folded in here, and I'm going to show you how that works. Thanks, Suzanne, for answering that. So, second, you're going to be able to identify audience segments within the general population that are prone to respond. And so that means, like the targeting example that Suzanne just gave you, you're going to be able to find the groups out there in your communities that are most prone to adopt the behaviors. And it's really smart to target our efforts there because our resources are always limited. So we have to do that. And, you know, it's going to help us choose tools and then implement. So what I really love about this website is that it's designed in a step-by-step fashion. So if you are trying to go from zero to full campaign and implement it and evaluate it, this gives you a way to walk through that. And so we can look at these steps. Each one is outlined. I'm not gonna, don't worry, don't panic. I'm not gonna go into detail about each one of them, but I do want you to know that there's some really good stuff here. For example, under identify a behavior, this is gonna help you think about what kind of a behavior. Make it single and indivisible. Make sure it's end state, meaning you're taking people out to the logical end. Suzanne and I both know of a pet waste campaign where the requested behavior was pick up your pet's waste. And so this campaign that was done in a semi-rural area in southern Anne Arundel County was successful because people were picking up their waste. But tell me if I'm telling this correctly, but the organizer of the campaign was walking down the street and there was a dog walker who threw the waste over the fence into the woods. You know, not exactly, she picked up the pet waste, but the end state was not achieved because we never asked people what, or we never requested that they should actually dispose of it properly in the trash. So make sure that you are carrying this through to the proper end state. There's some really good help here, and it's in the form of this worksheet that actually Suzanne and friends developed, and it's linked. And this is a template that's just linked on the website that you'll be able to find that will help you do the kind of prioritization that we're describing and then carry it all the way through to planning of your campaign. So it's a tool that you'll find here, which will be really helpful for you. I just wanted to show you one or two more quick things on this. Underneath step 4, develop your campaign strategies and tools. There are 3 parts. You're going to design your strategy and then select design tools to implement and then test your tools. And so these are outlined here, A, B, C. And so under the B, it describes some of the tools that are available. Doug Mackenzie Moore, one of the great gurus that a lot of you know about, has got a page in one of his books where he does this. He compares the barrier that you're facing, like forgetting to take my reusable bags into the grocery store. And so what does a person need when they forget to act? They need a prompt. In other words, a reminder, you know, and so it's as simple as that. And so once we know what the barrier is, we can match the right tool. And so this step-by-step process here is designed to help you figure out how to do that. And then under step 5, as you're implementing, and Tiffany, this gets a little bit maybe to your question of earlier, but it's going to ask you if you'd like to share or if you'd like to access other people's stuff, you know, and so we all want to make this kind of open source and allow everybody to freely share the best practices and the knowledge. And so this is going to allow you to create an account, and then you'll be able to go in there and post your campaign and your results. And then you're going to evaluate. So I'm going to show you actually what that case study part of this is going to look like. Campaigns are actually going to show up here now. This is like the new iteration of the case study database. And so you're going to be able to see campaigns. You're going to be able to sort them by behavior. So let's say that we want a rain barrel campaign. Well, Blue Water Baltimore did one. So we can click on it. Aaron Bennett was the project manager for this effort. And so you've got all kinds of great stuff here. An abstract of the campaign, the behaviors that she was targeting, research and strategy, lessons learned, which is a great and important part of this. And so if you are out there trying to figure out how to develop the right rain barrel campaign for your community, as this grows, you are going to have the ability to go in and look at other people's successes and their lessons learned and be able to either replicate or do something differently that they're recommending you do differently. So that's important. And then I wanted to show you the trends. And so there's some big storylines that emerge. And you'll be able to read those here just from the survey data. So, here's the kind of final big piece, and that is the actual data set. And this will link seamlessly. It's going to be right here, survey data, but it's not linked yet. It will be very shortly, but here's the beta for that. And so we want to share with you this idea that you're going to be able to go in and search for particular behaviors that interest you. And you're going to be able to drill down into your state, maybe your region, depending on how big your jurisdiction is or how big the data set is, maybe to the local jurisdictional level. So let's look at an example of how this works and what it will provide. For example, here's a rain barrel. So we have the opportunity number. What this means is that, as Suzanne described, what is opportunity? It's the kind of size of the available market. How many people have not yet gotten a rain barrel? Well, it looks like 86% of the public in the watershed, at least in 2017, were still available for rain barrel installation. And we all know that. I mean, there's tons of places we could put rain barrels. And then the second leg of the stool is likelihood. So of the 86% who haven't done it yet, how likely are they? And so this likelihood measure will tell you, the larger the green slice, the better. This one says of those people that are not yet doing it, almost 9% are they're very likely to get one. And then you've got another 13% who say they're somewhat likely. So you've got almost a quarter of the non-adopters who have some level of likelihood. And then the third leg is the impact. And this is, blunt at this point. It's just a low, medium, high measure based on what we know about kind of stormwater impact, water quality impact of these practices. And so a rain barrel may not be the most impactful one. And so it was given a low. So as you're thinking about what behaviors to adopt, you're going to be able to compare the opportunity and the likelihood of adoption, and then think about, and you'll have ideas, of course, you'll know what the environmental impact of each of these behaviors is in your own community based on a lot of different factors locally. So you can sort of weigh that one yourself, but it's meant to help you sort all of that out. So these are bay-wide readings, and it's going to develop a score based on all of those survey numbers. If people have questions on the technical side, even though we've only got a few minutes left, do put them into either the Q&A or the chat, and we can try to deal with them. But I do want to stop in a minute because I want to give you time to ask any questions for us to have discussion. But here's the 5,200 people. We have a strength of data score. Every data set that's collected through survey research has got an error factor associated with it because we didn't interview everybody. We only interviewed a sample. And so this tells you how confident you can feel about the strength of the data in the data set. And this is excellent because it's all 5,200. So as the sample size goes down, the confidence will go down a little bit. Let me see if I can really quickly, as I close, just give you an example of how that works. So I'm going to segment this for dog waste. We have two dog waste behaviors that we measure. One is people picking up and disposing of in the trash their dog waste when they're off away from their own property, and here when they're on their own property. And so, when we conducted this research in advance, one of our hypotheses was, I'll bet people leave the dog waste on their own yard, but are really good about picking it up when they're somewhere else. And so guess what we found out? On your own property, the opportunity number is 28, meaning about 72% said that they at least sometimes pick it up in their own yard. Versus off your property, the opportunity number is much greater. 54% admit that they seldom or never pick up their pet's waste when they're off their own property, which was shocking. So anyway, you can look at a finding like that, and that might tell you a couple things about how to finesse your campaign. Then you want to see who within the general population is picking up and is more likely. And so you're going to have the ability to filter all of these things by a whole variety of indicators. So let me stop. That's a lot of stuff, but what I really wanted to achieve was to give you a taste of what's here. And the forum, Suzanne has just put the link in so that you can learn more about that session we're going to do there. And we're also available at other times to give you much more around this, but I wanted to get you excited as we are about what we have here. So David, back to you.
Thanks, Steve, and thanks, Susanna. I am also very excited about this tool. I'm excited to kind of go in and dig around and play with the data a little bit. You know, I think, you know, we're looking forward to seeing what folks could do with it. I think we had a couple of questions come in. I see one in the chat that I did want to address, and it's sort of one that probably won't be addressed in this phase, but maybe something that we look at in the future, because we hear it a lot with certain kind of entry-level behavior change campaigns where they kind of become a gateway to, you know, more sustained engagement and stewardship in a neighborhood, where maybe you start with a pet waste campaign and the direct impact is, you know, a certain level, but now you have sort of a door to talk with certain community members about other initiatives that maybe have a greater impact. So I wondered if you guys have either observed that, or, you know, if there's, you know, any thoughts about how you can sort of, you know, capture or discuss the benefits of kind of getting in the door with some of these maybe easier engagement activities, and then kind of transitioning into talking about rain gardens or whatever down the road.
You want to take that, Suzanne?
Well, I'll start just by saying that there's sort of a well-known, you know, principle that if you ask someone to do something small, they're more likely to do something bigger when you ask them something bigger later. You know, you ask someone, oh, do you think you could, you know, pick up the mail for me, you know, one day while I'm on vacation? Someone does that. Then when you ask them to feed your cat and give them their medicine, they might do that. So, you know, so you start people small. There's also this other really important thing that I think is pivotal to all of our work, and that is relationships. You know, once people have a relationship with you, then there's a trust factor, and you're able to ask more things. And then lastly, I would say when you work with someone on a small behavior, you then get to know that audience a lot better, and everything you start learning about that audience makes you more able to remove those harder barriers for bigger things. So Steve, what would you add to that?
It sounds like you have experience with the cat issue, first of all, I would say. But yeah, I would completely agree. You know, I think one of the phenomena that we observe, and it's true with bay restoration, although it's changing, it's certainly true with climate change, is that the general public out there, average citizen X, you know, can feel like he or she is just not able to make a difference. And it's like a great big hairy problem that how could we ever? And so part of the challenge here is just to get people on the page, just to get them like doing something and feeling like they're contributing. And as Suzanne said, once we crack that door open a little bit, people start feeling better about their contribution and about what they can do, and they see neighbors doing stuff, and it grows. And so that conversation can broaden. And so yes, I think choosing something easy or simple or even not that impactful at first is a really smart way to start often.
Great, and I know we're at 1:30. If it's okay, I didn't want to touch on one or two more questions before we let folks go. If folks want to catch the recording, if you have to jump off, that's totally fine. We'll have it posted very shortly. But I wanted to ask a question that comes up a lot, and it's sort of, you talked about it a little bit, Steve, at the end there, but sort of what's going to be possible in terms of the demographic partitioning, you know, sort of what scales are going to be available for folks who are interested in digging into this data. You know, what are they going to be able to look at in terms of level of detail if they want to kind of learn more about their local audience?
Yeah, so this is a large and ambitious data set. It's really something that the Bay community can be very proud of, honestly. I mean, when we first approached this in 2015 and started thinking about it, one of the things that I did was conduct a lit review and kind of look at what else everybody was doing out there, not just in the US, but kind of much more broadly globally. And in terms of behavior change initiatives, this great big data set that we you know, set aside health stuff, because I think the health community is in a different league from all the rest of us in terms of the intensity of data collection that they do. But aside from that, I mean, this is a gigantic data set. So you are going to be able to segment by all the traditional demographics that you might be able to think about. Age and race and ethnicity and gender identity and other things like that. But in addition, this gives you things like housing type, community characteristics. There is faith identity and tradition and frequency of worship in that context. There's some socioeconomic indicators here, all of which this tool that I just showed you makes it possible to access in what I think is a really friendly way. Like, I think it's going to be easy for people. So it's really cool. I mean, we're excited to kind of uncork it so that people can try using it and then give us feedback about how it's going. But anyway, that's it. There's a lot.
Can I add one really big important thing to that, which is that Anne Arundel County is so lucky that we have that extra data set so that we can be confident in Anne Arundel County to like really drill down. So the next data set is going to be collected in 2022. So the planning for that is currently underway, and local jurisdictions are going to have the opportunity to buy in their own samples. So that's a really important thing. If any local government folks are still listening in there, we'll be able to share more information as we have sort of some cost estimates. But boy, talk about probably a very small dollar value that will be really valuable. You know, if you want to just drill down to your local area and really have some data behind your outreach programs, I think that would be money well spent.
Thanks, Suzanne. That actually answered the last question that I had, which is to sort of lead you into what is coming next in terms of data collection. So I think we can probably leave it there. I really appreciate all of you joining us today. Hopefully folks that were on the line got a lot of good suggestions, both in terms of practical kind of program and partnership types of opportunities, as well as kind of a little bit of excitement about this new web and data tool. Before I let you all go, just for those of you who are still on the line, we have the short evaluation survey that I linked in the chat. If you could take a minute or so just to let us know, how we're doing, and if you have other suggestions for future webcasts, we appreciate it. I also mentioned at the beginning that this is going to have a part 2 next week on Wednesday as well at the same time. The Gunpowder Valley Conservancy is going to be joining us. They were another BUBBAs education and outreach winner. We hope to have them in today, but scheduling wise, we couldn't work it out. So they're going to be with us next week to talk a little bit about their education and outreach campaign. It's a really exciting program. It sort of brings in a lot of these stewardship components, working in community engagement opportunities. They did a lot of social science and behavior change work to sort of design that program and sustain it over a number of years now to sort of lead to on the ground stormwater practice implementation. So if you are interested in the topic, I encourage you to sign up and join us next week, or at the very least try to catch an archived recording of it, because it should be another good one. So I'll let everyone go who's still on the line. Thank you for joining us and for sticking around a couple minutes past 1:30. Thanks again to all of our speakers, and we will hopefully see you all soon.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, David, for putting this together.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, David. Appreciate it. Take care.